So we have a lot of things to discuss. We have Google News, we have Microsoft News, we have WordPress News, we have other tech news, and we have some Yoast News, because apparently we are not tech news.
Come for the SEO news, stay for tacos jokes. Excellent. Yes, that's how we're going to rebrand the whole thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Taco is the main act. We are just that's it. Anyway, let's dive in because we have a lot to cover. Google News. Google's page experience update has rolled out. We've been talking about this for like 100 years now, right?
Yeah, at least 2011, I think, was the earliest sign I found of Google saying that page speed was a thing. And yeah, it feels like that was a while ago.
Yeah, I have kids that are younger than that. Yeah. Anything new that we should tell about this?
I don't think so, but I guess a brief summary. We've talked about this a lot for a long time. Google have spent the last few years saying that page speed is important. And more recently, they've rolled out their measurements for Core Web Vitals, which are a nice set of metrics for measuring speed and other things. And then they started saying Core Web Vitals metrics would be a ranking factor. So if you have a fast site, you rank better. If you have a slow site, you probably rank worse. Not the biggest ranking factor in the world, and certainly depends on whether you're faster or slower than your competitors, but definitely means it's worth paying attention to. None of this is new. It's just done and official and out there in the wild now. So if you haven't cracked on with measuring, monitoring, managing your site speed, it's definitely time to get on top of that.
Yeah, and it looks like this research by Systrix actually proves that we can prove that it has a ranking impact.
Yeah, this was great because Google's communications were a bit muddy, to say the least. In some cases, they said this wouldn't be a ranking factor. In some cases, they said it would be, but only a tiebreaker, like if everything else is equal. And of course, nothing else is ever equal. You've got different sites with different content and different everything. And in some other cases, they said it would be a big ranking factor. So we didn't really know what to expect. Yeah, Systrix have done some great research using a whole bunch of their metrics, looking at which sites have done better and which sites have done worse, comparing it to their Core Web Vitals metrics. And yeah, the study shows that if you have a faster site, you might well do anywhere between maybe 5, 10, 30% better than your competitors. So this is definitely worth looking at. And even more so if you know that your competitors aren't very fast. So yeah, this should be something you're paying attention to.
Cool. And then we found something that I thought was incredibly cool, and then you had some very good comments on it.
Yeah.
But Web Vitals patterns. Explain to us what this is in theory.
Yeah, this is really nice in theory. So web.dev is a Google website with a whole bunch of examples and documentation and resources on how to build good stuff and fast stuff and secure stuff. This Web Vitals patterns was attempts to solve a problem that, let's say you don't have a very fast site and you're not sure where to start. You might well say, okay, I've used Core Web Vitals, I've used Lighthouse, I've used the metrics, and it says that actually I've got a problem with the carousel on my homepage or the images in my footer. What Web Vitals patterns does, it says actually a lot of components of web pages are pretty much the same. One carousel isn't that different to another, and there are good ways of coding these types of things. And it gives you some examples and some code and some approaches on how you might make that bit faster. So it's mostly a kind of developer resource, but it's really nice to see Google going from saying, just do it well, to saying, okay, and here are some resources and examples that you can learn from. Now, some of these, you could definitely make an argument that they're not perfect. There are some bits they've missed. There are some bits that conflict with some of their other guidelines. But if you're looking for somewhere to start and you know that you have a specific problem that's to do with images or pop-up windows or something similar, this is a great resource to jump into.
Cool. And I've lost once again my screen. Last time we talked for a bit too much about titles. And now Titlegate, which the fact that we're even calling it Titlegate is giving it a lot of honor, isn't it? But it continues. So they've updated their documentation.
Yeah, I think the pressure from the SEO industry on everybody saying, hey, Google, please stop misrepresenting my brand and please stop destroying my click-through rate because you're rewriting my titles into nonsense might have touched a nerve at Google. So they wrote this documentation saying two things, essentially. We've dialed it back a bit. So something like it was appearing on something like it was 13%, it's now only 10 or something like that. But also they gave a little bit of insight into the hows and the whys of where they're changing it. Nothing profound, but it's quite nice to see them acknowledging that this is a thing. I guess the practical takeaway is that this doesn't look like it's going away. It looks like they're committed to it, and they're going to continue to keep changing people's titles where they think they can do a better job. So we really just need to adapt to that and try and manage that and monitor it as best we can.
Yep. We had one more slide because there's this nice case study.
Yeah, this was lovely. This is Dr. Pete from Moz, who many people will have come across. Studied 8,000 title tag rewrites, trying to find common patterns. Like, they're not rewriting them randomly. They have reasons and rationale. And a lot of them are fairly obvious. It's things like, well, this page didn't have a title, or the title was back to front, or it repeated a word, and really simple things. And it definitely makes sense in those cases for Google to say, okay, we can tidy this up and do a better job. But there were also cases where they did it wrong, where it wasn't clear what the brand name was, and they restructured the whole thing in a way that was weird, or they chopped out words. I guess if this is here to stay, and certainly the research suggests that it is, you really need to be more actively checking your title tags, both at template level and individually page by page. So if you're using Yoast, well, hey, through the search appearance settings, go through and check your template logic makes sense, that your category pages make sense, that your author archives make sense, and so on. And then also go through and check page by page. I would aim for being as short and succinct as you can while still fully describing the page, which is really hard, right? Use as few words as possible, but as many as needed. So certainly don't overdo it. You don't need 1,000 words in your title. That's more things for Google to get wrong, but don't chop it right down. So yeah, it's a tough balancing act.
You heard it here first, people. You don't need 1,000 words.
SEO tips.
That is the best SEO tip we've given in a decade.
Yep.
This was more on point actually than a whole lot of other things. Smart internal linking. I love it when they talk.
Yeah, really nice. So the SEO industry obsesses about links, for better or worse, but internal links aren't that trendy. Oh, I think I can hear an echo of me on your side yet. No, we're good. Internal links have never been particularly trendy, but you can really, really achieve some impressive impact by helping Google to understand the structure of your site, helping them discover your most important pages. Linking users through your content to relevant stuff can be useful. Hey, they can find the answers to the questions they're looking for. All of this is good, and it's great to see Google saying, pay attention to this. Now, the specific example in that link in the case study is a little bit technical and weird, but the principle is really strong, that you need to use internal links to signpost Google to all your important stuff. So well worth looking at.
I see a question in the chat for the links. I think Taco can drop those in, or someone else from the team. We will certainly share those.
Yes.
There was research by Search Pilot, our good friends over at Search Pilot, I should say. And this is kind of funny, right? They did research into increasing the number of links in the footer of a customer's homepage, which is not something I would normally recommend people do in many cases. At the same time, it always works.
Yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous.
Spammy.
Yeah, and in this example, you can see in the tweet, they said this was an e-commerce site that already had 30 links in the footer. And if you think as a user, that's a lot. Like, I only want to buy one thing, so 30 choices is already a lot of choices. But taking that up to 100, this is a full-on sitemap in the footer. But what this doesn't cover when you dig into it, this was a big and complex site that had many, many pages and many, many categories, not the best internal architecture. So yes, they put a lot of not great quality links on the homepage footer, but they helped Google understand which the most important pages were and how to get them. And that prioritization gave them an uplift of 5 to 10% on their click-through rates and rankings, et cetera, et cetera. So the takeaway isn't put 100 links in your footer. The takeaway is make sure that you are helping direct Google to your most important content.
Well, I think the biggest takeaway here is indeed that it's a site structure, and just fixing your internal linking is hugely important to your rankings.
Yeah.
Which is something that we've been seeing for a while. Um, you know what? We even have this plugin that has all these functionality for it, and our premium plugin has a ton of internal linking functions just because of that. And our recent new workouts are even more ways of improving your internal linking and really making your site rank better. It actually works. Go try it.
Yeah, the workouts are really cool. Actually, this isn't a huge overplug, but the workouts are really cool. We kind of automatically scan all your content and work out where you should be linking to what from what in a really intuitive way, which is nice. I've also just seen a question about, give us an example. Check out Yoast Academy. We have courses on this stuff that teaches you the basics. Really cool.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it is really, well, in many ways very cool. I always flinch when I see an image or a picture of John Mew without glasses on, but because it feels like he's cheating. But changing WordPress themes can influence rankings. I was like, duh, but apparently this is news to people.
Yeah, I think in the WordPress space, we've kind of normalized the idea that you might change your theme every week. You might, okay, I'm going to change to a blue one. I'm going to change to one that has 2 sidebars instead of 1. And that's quite a normal thing in WordPress. I think the SEO in me goes, that's a bit scary, because the theme isn't just the color. The theme is all of your HTML, it's all of your JavaScript, all of your CSS, all of the way that your images load, all of the way that Google understands your content. Your theme is all the stuff that Google consumes. So if you're changing that, you're potentially introducing a lot of risk, where one small aspect of that might change how Google perceives the quality of your page, or it might change how users interact with it. If you do something that increases your bounce rate, that might negatively impact your SEO. So yeah, changing themes might mean nothing at all, but it might be a huge deal. You're essentially replacing the front end of your website. So people really underestimate the impact of that. Definitely be conscious that if you're going to go through those kinds of changes, you really need to be analyzing everything that is changing and making sure that it's not making a mess.
Well, and in fact, most of the time, changing a theme also changes how you're linking internally, because it changes a lot about how you set up your menus, how you where you're linking to what. And so there's a lot more aspects to this than just changing a color. If you just change the background color of your site, that's not going to impact your rankings. But if you change the whole layout and structure, then yes, of course. And there we go again to the next one. Google wants to index TikTok and Instagram videos.
Yeah.
And I understand why they want to do this, because they say that they want to, in their mission statement is they want to organize all the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Try saying that out fast. But and they're missing entire parts of the web that are creating more content than anything else at the moment.
Yeah, you look at YouTube's a big deal. Like, it's the second biggest search engine in the world, and it makes them a lot of money, but it doesn't have any TikTok content in it. And there are billions of videos that they don't have. So yeah, that's a big drive for them.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. We'll see where this goes.
It might amount to nothing, but I think interestingly for me, you think back to 2015, Google didn't have tweets in the search results, and not until they did a license like this with Twitter to get access to it. And now it's perfectly normal to Google something and see some relevant tweets. And actually, quite often they're really useful because they're up to date, they're right in the moment, not just news, but things like product reviews and information. It's become a really normal part of the search results. I don't think it would be particularly alien to get short form video from TikTok or wherever, Instagram, in the search results as well, that might influence buying decisions or research processes or user behavior.
No, I agree. It could be very cool. So with that, there wasn't any more Google news that we found worthy of sharing with you, which says a lot, because I already thought that this was a tiny bit boring. So here's a request to our friends at Google to make something that actually makes me want to talk about it. Then we had some Microsoft news, and this was actually, you described this to me, Jono, and because I'm a Mac user and I don't get most of this, as Discover for Windows.
Yeah, so we've talked about Google Discover previously, which is when you open your Android phone or similar devices, before you search, you get a whole load of recommendations, like a news feed. What's interesting about this is it's personalized based on a whole bunch of factors, including your search history and other stuff. And it changes the way that search works. I'm no longer typing in a keyword and getting results. Google is preemptively giving me suggestions. And this very much is Microsoft's equivalent baked into Windows 11. So Windows 11 is currently in the process of launching and being rolled out. Everyone will upgrade for free. This is millions and millions and millions and millions of devices which will get a personalized news feed as part of their home desktop experience where they're not typing in keywords. And I think from an SEO perspective, this is really interesting because I still want my content to rank and be visible and discovered there, but I can't optimize my rankings for keywords. Instead, I've got to optimize for, am I a trusted news publisher? Do I behave like a media outfit? Do I produce timely content? Do I do reviews? Do I produce support content? Do I have an opinion? Am I timely? All of these things that are unlikely to convert and sell, but are going to win discovery and preference and brand familiarity way at the top of the funnel for a much broader audience. So really the SEO strategy moves beyond just how do I write content to rank for my keywords into how do I produce and publish anything that helps audiences discover and engage with me really, really broadly, which is a really hard ask, but otherwise you'll find that you don't get discovered in these environments.
No, and the funny thing is that Discover actually is driving a whole lot of traffic to a lot of people, and this could very well also start driving a whole lot of traffic. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where this goes, and also curious to see how easy it is to get into this. So yeah, we'll have to find out.
Yeah.
And then, because Microsoft actually didn't do anything else, we have some WordPress news. WordPress 5.9 scope has been starting to be discussed. Most of it's about full site editing, which is the continuation of our beloved Gutenberg project, where we're slowly moving towards a future in which a page builder basically is part of WordPress core itself. I think it actually is a good change, but I'm hoping that the 5.9 will actually bring us a step further for real.
Yeah, it feels like we've been talking about this for a while, and there's a lot of plans and a lot of things that are in the pipeline, but we're not seeing a lot of it yet. But this should be the moment when it starts to become more concrete. I think that's as good a reason as any to say, again, start playing with the block editor. If you're not using Gutenberg, if you're still on the classic editor plugin, I would take this as an opportunity to go and prepare for the future. Again, we said this last time. Yes, you can just use classic editor and avoid Gutenberg if you just want to write words on a page. But if you want to compete, you need to use the right tools to publish the best content, and the block editor really is that. Now, that said, somebody asked a really interesting question just now about when we were talking about changing themes and changing CSS and things and how that might affect you in a block-based world. I think there's a really interesting question of if I'm doing full site editing and my site is built of blocks, what's the answer to the question? How do I make that safe? What happens if I change bits of my theme all the time? I don't think there's any good answers to that yet. So it's worth watching to see how we manage the SEO side of this. What even is a page when all the blocks are interchangeable and might be tweaked and moved independently? We shall find out.
Yeah, there's a lot of very interesting discussions going on there. Our own WordPress core team at Joost is very involved in a whole lot of these discussions, and when we know, we'll tell you, but we don't know either yet.
Yep.
I have a very nice slide here that shows the new gallery block in is that in 5.9?
Yes, I think so. Frantic Googling. Let me just double check that. I was reading about it earlier today. So,
but yeah, this is really, really, really nice because in the past, galleries was something that you installed a plugin for, and with this, it has all the things that I think you'd want in a normal gallery. So you don't need to install that gallery anymore. You have a Gutenberg native gallery that looks good and seems to work quite nicely.
Yeah, and this is coming in 5.9 apparently. And also this should be so much faster than any of the plugins that you currently need to do this, that add tons of JavaScript and HTML gubbins. This, because it's native, should be pretty sleek. So yeah, it'd be really exciting to see how this plays out. You can also tinker with this in much more detail than you can with many plugins. You can tweak individual image behavior and styling and stuff. It looks really cool.
Yeah, I really look forward to this. I see some people asking in the chat, like, is this going to be faster than other stuff, etc.? Yes. And if not, we'll make sure it is.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a few people interested in performance improvements for WordPress, luckily. So we are working together with some other people on improving that. I can't say much more about that, but keep watching this space. Maybe watch the next webinar. I think we'll have something to tell you by then. But yeah, no, we will make sure it's fast. It is one of the things that we do at Yoast. And then there's a whole bunch of other tech news that we need to talk about. First of all, let's set the stage a bit. Jono, take us through this.
Yes, this is super boring, but I think quite important. Sorry. So much of the free internet and the services we use every day are powered by ads. And that comes with pros and cons, right? Historically, there has been very little governance and legally, mechanically, technically on how those ads work. And that has led today to a world full of privacy issues and performance issues. And that is starting to be addressed by governments, by companies, by consortiums. And gradually, we're standardizing how the ad industry and ad networks and individual adverts should work and what the privacy rules are and how they should be implemented. The big thing that's going to change in the next few years is that many browsers, including Chrome, will stop supporting third-party cookies. Now, it doesn't sound particularly exciting, but what that means is a huge chunk of the less well-behaved ad industry will start to struggle. Their revenues will drop, their ad viewings will drop, and that will radically change the face of the internet. Huge amounts of free services will struggle. If your blog is monetized by running ads, you might expect to see your revenues half overnight, maybe. Nobody really knows yet. Nobody knows where this is going. And it's quite hard to give specific recommendations, but there is a huge change on the horizon. It's getting pushed back a bit, but in the next few years, the very shape of the internet is going to change quite considerably. And that will mean that you might want to, if you're reliant on ads, change your content strategy. If you're tied heavily into networks of sites that are run on ads, then reevaluate those partnerships. Start thinking about the role that advertising through banner ads and things plays in your ecosystem and think, what happens if that suddenly starts to fall apart a bit? Maybe I should rely more on affiliate marketing or lead generation and other options, but start thinking about that now because it's going to be pretty profound when it all happens.
Well, it's already Facebook in their numbers recently said that they are actually suffering quite hard from Apple's tracking changes. Apple is being quite aggressive in actually blocking a whole lot of this. And that's actually costing companies like Facebook and Google a lot of money, which I would say is a good thing because that's money that is probably... well, it shouldn't have been spent that way at that point. But it is, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes in many, many ways.
I guess the SEO advice is the same as usual, which is that you need to be building a brand and being a publisher and creating and building an audience who trusts you, who uses you as a resource, because then whatever changes mechanically in the web, you can still reach and connect with that audience. You can collect their email addresses, you can have conversations, and you're not reliant on hand to mouth. How many people can I get to view my adverts? It's easier said than done, but that's the direction of travel.
So, and then we come to our regular ad section, and I promise that this is not a paid for ad, but and the thing is that we keep promoting this single company, and it is because this single company called Cloudflare keeps putting out stuff that is incredible, and their speed of building out new things is ridiculous. I don't know how to do it, and every time I look at it, I'm like, oh wow. So yeah, this week is their birthday week. Congratulations, Cloudflare, are on turning 10. They're younger than us, so we we have parent-like feelings for them. No, it's not true. They're much bigger than we are. But yeah, this signed exchanges on Google search, it's actually a lot harder to read than what it really is, isn't it, Jono?
Yeah, so if you've followed any of the discussions around AMP, you'll have noticed that when you search for something in Google and you click on an AMP result, it loads it instantly. That's because Google does a whole bunch of clever gubbins, and they pre-cache and automatically load that URL before you click it. So super, super lightning fast. Signed exchanges allows anybody to do that. So this is a huge deal. So imagine somebody searches for a keyword, they see your site, they click it, and Google has already loaded that URL. So it literally loads instantly. Even if you've got a slow site, even if you're not optimized it very well, it's already loaded and there ready in the browser. That's a huge deal. And this has been technically possible since about April, but really, really hard to implement for the average site owner. Cloudflare now has a waiting list for a feature that just automatically turns it on, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's the biggest one for me, is we can now use Google to kind of bypass all of our performance issues. Now, you should still make a fast site. You should still provide a good experience, but this is even faster and even more on top. And yeah, it's one of 3 or 4 huge speed boosting features that Cloudflare have launched recently. If you're not already playing with Cloudflare, go get a free account, whack it in front of your website and put your feet up, because you are done for the week.
Yeah, it is really, I can't imagine doing a whole lot of performance work without Cloudflare anymore, to be honest, at this point, which is also a bit scary, because I would like it for it to be a bit more on an open stack somewhere that everybody was using, but unfortunately that's not really feasible, I think.
Yeah, they are increasingly the backbone of the internet, alongside the Googles and the Amazons, but this is the lesser of those evils for sure.
Yeah, in talking about lesser of evils, Shopify is the company that we keep cheering on, especially because it is the anti-Amazon in many ways.
Yes.
And this is another step in that direction, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's great to see them investing more in SEO type stuff. Now, this isn't directly SEO, but it's a nice side effect. They have launched a global commerce hub, they're calling it, which is essentially, if you want to say, okay, I want to expand my market into Germany and America this week, that's nightmarishly complicated from a logistics, legal, language, tax, shipping perspective. They've made all of that much easier, and you can just go, yep, we're now going to start selling in Spain, and we're going to have different shipping rules, and we're going to have different product inventory and different pricing rules, and it makes it really, really easy. You can do this sort of stuff with WooCommerce in WordPress, but you need 20 plugins that all don't quite work together, and it all gets a bit janky. It's really nice that this is sleek, and you just go, yep, I'm rolling out internationally.
Yeah, multi-currency and multilingual is horrible, and especially because you're localizing across 2 different things at that point. So you're localizing by language and by currency, which also means that you need a different site for Spain than you need for Latin America, because you probably have different currencies, and it just becomes so super painful. Let's start about something else, because I'll get depressed. And to cheer me up, we're going to talk about Facebook.
Yeah, I almost glossed over this story because it just felt a bit more, Facebook have rolled out more business tools. But there was one thing that stuck out, which we should have got a screenshot of actually, which is that one of the things they've launched is they are allowing users to specify topic. Is this it? Yes. They're allowing users to specify topics that they're interested in and to nominate preferences in relation to businesses. So you can say, yes, I'm interested in vegan food. Yes, I'm interested. I'm not, but you get the idea. I'm interested in whatever. And Facebook can then use that to surface recommendations and options and interactions in much the same way as Google Discover or Microsoft's options. And this is, I think, another example of this kind of preemptive search where these platforms aren't waiting for the user to type a keyword. They're saying, oh, we have a recommendation for you. We think you'll like this. And the same story applies. You can only really get into those spaces, A, if you're a good fit for what the user might want, which is a challenge in itself, but then B, also behaving like a publisher, having timely, opinionated, rich media content that answers problems and questions and doesn't just try and sell at the bottom of the funnel. This is a trend that goes so much further than just Google Discover. If you want to win tomorrow's SEO game, you have to be a content publisher, not just writing content for keywords. And it's such a broader thing.
Yeah, and there's also so many other aspects to this. So I sort of want a world where Facebook knows that if it's 5 p.m. and I haven't been to the store yet, it should start recommending me a restaurant nearby that some of my friends have gone to recently. And Facebook has all the ingredients to do that.
Other than handling the fear that will create.
Yeah, I've given up on that. But, but yeah, you're probably right. And then I'm gonna try and get you to redo what you said when you first saw Twitter community.
It seems like every social media platform feels that they really have to recreate every feature on every other social media platforms. Like everything now has stories, everything now has live video. And
to be fair, Twitter doesn't have stories anymore.
No, they binned that. That's true. Good. And I like that they were brave enough to do that. So yeah, this is Twitter doing a thing that Reddit already does. Now I've never, as a tech geek, it may surprise you, I've never got into Reddit. And it's because I think it's already very well established. It's a little bit scary. It's its own ecosystem with its own rules, and the content is hard to get into. Twitter communities is very similar to Reddit, but Twitter. So I can join a group which is focused on, hey, technical SEO, and it's Twitter, but contained. And the group has rules, and I'm not allowed to say certain things like recommending the wrong plugins. And there are moderators who might have rules and might kick me out if I'm offensive. And we start to see a different flavor of Twitter, which might be really interesting. It might do a lot of what Reddit does, but better for a different audience. It might be a great way to build groups and communities and conversations and help support and specialist groups. I don't know yet, but I think this is a really interesting idea. We shall see. It might take a bite out of the Reddit ecosystem, especially if Google are indexing it in the way they're indexing tweets. You suddenly start to, these become mini websites for topic expertise. That could be interesting.
Yeah. I think this could be really cool. I really do like Twitter. So I think this has a great potential.
Nicholas in the chat rightly points out it could just exacerbate the echo chamber problem, which is definitely an issue. If I join a Twitter group that is full of people who only agree with me and only talk about the things I agree with, I don't think that's good for the world, but we'll see how well that's managed.
I agree that any group that only agrees with you is not a good group.
Yeah, risky, very risky.
Yeah, it's going too far. So we've done a couple of updates recently. Yoast SEO 17.1 definitely brought a couple of changes regarding page titles, and we because of Google's stupid things had to change some of our rule sets, etc. As I said before, we have this cool plugin called Yoast SEO Premium. It's paying for all our salaries, which is important because my salary is important to me. Thank you very much.
And all the effort we put into launching great features as well.
Yeah. That too. Sorry. We also released WooCommerce SEO 14.4, which has we overhauled the analysis that we do in Yoast SEO. So all the green, orange, and red bullets are now tailored a bit more to WooCommerce and to products.
Nice.
I think that's actually a great change. If you don't know what WooCommerce SEO is, well, It is an add-on to Yoast SEO that helps you drive traffic to your online store. Then in Yoast SEO 17.2, we added readability analysis for Farsi, which, if you don't know what it is, it's the language they speak in large parts of Iran. It's always cool to add new languages that we know a lot of our users use. We have a lot of users in Iran, and although they're not able to buy from us, sorry, we're part of a US company now, so we're not allowed to sell to you. We are very happy to ship Farsi to them. I did a podcast with our good friend Mike King, who is not only the best rapper in the world, as his domain says, but is also a great SEO. So do listen to that podcast if you fancy listening to 50 minutes of two OG SEOs rambling about shit. I think we had a couple of very good things in there on internal linking, personas, and other fun stuff.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you. I like hearing that. And then our great CEO and my lovely wife, Marika, did a webinar, workshop, however you want to call it, on how to write readable content. Now, at least half of you need to listen to this, because most of the content I write on the web isn't actually readable. So you can watch a replay of that for free. Just go there, have fun, etc. If you want to learn more, well, there's always more. We have Yoast Academy. It is filled to the top with a lot of SEO, WordPress, and writing stuff. Have fun with it. There's a lot of free courses, and if you buy Yoast SEO Premium, you get access to all of the Yoast SEO Academy, so you can get a whole lot of courses and a whole lot of training in. And with that, this is the cue for Taco to join us usually. And we will announce that the next webinar is on October 19th. That's quite soon, actually.
It is. It's a bit sooner because it's a holiday in the Netherlands the week after. So that's why we're a bit early.
Yeah, so I'll be in Italy the week after. That's good.
Nice.
Yeah, they do have internet in Italy, though, so you could have just joined. But we're doing it on the 19th of October anyway. And if you want to sign up, there is a very nice flashy green button at the bottom of your screen. So move that mouse, clicky, clicky, and make sure that you are signed up for the next webinar. There's actually another nice feature in Crowdcast, because you can follow Yoast. And that is near the top of your screen, there is a follow button. And if you click that, you get all the updates right in your mailbox. So then you don't have to wait for us to tell you when the next one is, because Crowdcast will keep you posted. So with that, I think there are a few questions. And we have a very long one by Jane that was upvoted a lot. If you have an old news post that is not optimized well, and you don't have the time to optimize it, I understand the page won't rank well, but will it harm the overall SEO value of my website? So should I take it down rather than leave it there?
So, as with every SEO answer, always, the answer is...
It depends.
It depends.
We should make a jingle out of this.
Nice.
So if it's a historic news post that has value in a historical context, then keep it. If it is random news, and then that not really has a big historical impact to your company or whatever, then I would probably say delete it. And redirect it to the homepage or whatever. It is very easy if you have an active like PR person or something like that to create news every day, every week, depending on the size of your company, and that adds up over time. So if you've been doing that for a decade, then you have a lot of pages on your site that basically don't add any value. And at that point, I really would suggest removing it.
Or no index them if they need to be kept for a different reason. But yeah, then you can protect yourself from them ranking when they shouldn't.
Yeah. In general, it is, well, news is important, but it's also like when you start to think about these things, you also start to realize that maybe creating a post for every tiny little thing on your website is also not the best thing to do. So yeah, there is a bit of a process to follow here, but in general, I think the fact that you are thinking about this is a very good sign of what you're doing to your SEO.
Yep.
All right. So I think that's a nice compliment, Jane. Next one. Do daily social media posts rank at all, or do they need to be published on a website to rank and show up on Google Alerts?
This is really interesting, I think, because yes, social media posts can definitely rank. We see tweets ranking, we see Facebook posts ranking, we see bits of LinkedIn ranking. They are on strong domains, they can be relevant content, they can do really well. The question then is, what's the objective and what's the value? A really sophisticated SEO strategy might say, you know what? If they've read my content and they've discovered my brand and they got what they were looking for, does it matter whether that was on Twitter or my domain? Or you might say, actually, it's really important to get them back to my website so that they can see my ads or fill in my lead gen forms. In which case, yes, you need to embed the content on your site, or maybe even don't rely on third-party platforms. So really think about, why am I putting this content on wherever I'm putting it? And is that the best strategy for me? So it depends.
Again,
we never say that, do we?
All right. So this is one where I'm not going to let you answer it with "it depends."
Oh, this is my favorite question, though. This is a very definite
Why
answer.
do we need outbound links, Jono?
This is so great. You don't, technically. So all of the research suggests that outbound links in your content do not affect your ranking. They are not a ranking factor. However, they do make you write better. They force you to be less talking about yourself. They force you to provide references to other resources which back up what you're saying. They force you to validate your own expertise. That means you produce better content. When you produce better content, you engage and solve your users' problems better, which means you get more linked to, you get more user engagement metrics, and you rank better. Linking to other places makes you better content.
Not just that. If you link to other people, the chance of other people linking to you heavily improves.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that if you use WooCommerce SEO and you're optimizing a product page, you'll notice that we no longer tell you to link out, because on a product page, it doesn't actually make all that much sense to do that. But on the wider web, the web is built by links. Content that doesn't link to other content is a dead end. The web doesn't like dead ends. So there's a reason we're keeping it in there, even though we're fairly aware that it's not a ranking factor. It is because we think the web is a better thing with that rule in it than without it.
It does not depend.
No.
Thank you. You can use your "it depends" answer again with the next question. Internal links are important. However, if I don't add them in the article itself in the content box, but through a builder below the article, it doesn't seem to count. But does Google still see them as internal links?
There's no it depends here. Yes, Google sees them as internal links. Depends a bit on how you look at this. So there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of when you talk about links in general. Links have value because they are links in and of themselves. So they are, because page A links to page B gets a bit of value from page A. That's how the PageRank algorithm works. That's how basically every algorithm that does something with links work. At the same time, we know from a lot of Google patents that they also derive value from what is around the link, from the context of from which stuff is linked. And a links block below a post is something different than a link within an article on a specific word or section. So Google will still see it. It's not entirely useless. Is it as good as an in-content link within a paragraph? I don't think so. But yeah, there is just reasons for both. Well, you can use both. It's just that we don't always recognize, depending on how your builder works, etc., domain Yoast SEO. So we might not give you credit for those internal links.
Right. I promised that with this question you could use your "it depends" answer, and that's because there's an additional question to it, and that is, how many internal links are too many, and how many are too few?
I don't think there is such a thing. I think that if you look at Wikipedia, and look at how many internal links pages can have there, and they're all useful to users at some point. I think that should be the the judgment call you have to make. Is this link useful to people visiting my website? If it is, put it in. If it's not, leave it at.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to skip one and go to Corey's question. What are the best tools to identify potential issues presented in Core Web Vitals?
I can solve that with a link that I've just pasted in now. But the summary is Page Speed Insights is really, really good for scanning pages and finding out what's going on. And your Google Search Console account is really, really good for site-wide issues and template-level issues. Go wade through their stuff. The documentation's great. It will point you in the right direction. But yeah, check out that post for some other tools and options.
Right, that's a quick answer. So for those who missed it in the chat, I also commented on the question in the questions and answer box with the same link.
Nice.
Then there is a question that is more related to our product, I guess. Is there a problem with using the ampersand in titles in Yoast? My recent post with an ampersand was not displayed properly in Google, but I've never had that issue before.
I don't know, Sherry. You'd actually have to give me a more specific example for me to be able to figure it out. But I think our support team is otherwise happy to help you with that if you're a customer. I'm not aware of any problems there. But yeah, the ampersand is a special entity, as they would call it in HTML. And sometimes when your theme does stuff with it, it might actually go wrong for whatever reason. So yeah, happy to have a look, but I don't know the specifics here.
Yeah, so if you want to reach out to the support team, the best way to do so is through your My Yoast account. There's a nice help button, and that will give you direct access to the Yoast support team. Let me scroll a bit, because this is a question that was asked even before we started the webinar, and we talked a bit about it just before, because Bianca said, when sharing a web link in Facebook Messenger, the created metadata in Yoast, of course, are not used. Can we influence what Messenger uses as meta text?
Yeah, so I was just researching this because I could swear that this worked in the past.
Yeah.
So I was messaging Jono with some links, and it doesn't work right now. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff going on with Facebook and Messenger and expanding URLs and not expanding URLs and all sorts of stuff around that I don't really know why this isn't working. The weird thing is that it is working on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So it really, I really don't get it. And I didn't have.
You know what it is? I know what it is. It's the European legal thing that tripped us up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. But yeah, why then does it work on WhatsApp? Just because they haven't. Well, so there is a bit of controversy and nonsense around being able to expand stuff from a site on Facebook and we'll write an article about this. It's boring legal bullshit.
It's an EU privacy legal Google Facebook thing, and it's messy. But yeah, we'll get to the bottom of it.
We will look at it. I was actually, thank you for the question, because I actually thought this worked, and I now know that it doesn't. And I will get to the bottom of this. Luckily, we have some friends up in high places at Facebook, and we should be able to get to the bottom of this.
I also really like how you said, this is really boring, I'll write a post about it. Like, no one's going to read that if you advertise it like this.
The thing is that sometimes writing a post triggers people actually fixing stuff.
Right. All right. So Gia, who has been very active asking questions today, has another one that got quite a few upvotes. Why are descriptions on images of importance to SEO?
Definitely one for you, Yoast. What with you owning the ultimate guide to all things image SEO posts that still kicks around.
Why do I own that article? Can't I just rename that? No. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of reasons why images are important to your SEO. To begin with, a lot of people search in image search, and having your images show up there properly actually helps. It drives a lot of traffic. And the funny thing is, if you don't use image search a lot yourself, try doing that every once in a while. If you're searching for a product, try and searching for an image of a product. This is actually a very good way of searching for stuff in Google these days. So that's one reason. The second reason has nothing to do with SEO and everything to do with accessibility. If you want people all over the web to be able to see images, and if they the image, it helps if you describe it for them. If you're trying to reach a bigger audience, improving your accessibility is one of the things that you should basically always do. So yeah, that is basically that. I think we've lost Jono.
I'm here. I've just had a little bit of an internet blip, but I'm still here.
Oh.
Yeah, that's... Are you on Wi-Fi, Jono?
I am. I don't know what went wrong. You're good now.
All right. So let me quickly search for a question that you are going to love. Is Gutenberg better than, say, Elementor?
Yes.
Ooh.
And I love my friends at Elementor. Well, love is maybe a strong word. I really do like them. But I do think Gutenberg is better. Yeah, there is a lot of reasons for that, but in the long run, I think that the platform that all of WordPress uses and that we all develop on together is always going to be better than something built by an individual company.
Especially as they're having to build layers and layers on top of and around what WordPress does in the core. That's always going to be complex and big and expensive. So stripping all that away and having something that is built for purpose right in the core is going to be much better.
All right. That means that I can skip a similar question about Divi because that will have the very same answer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then Amanda asks us a question, and she asked it in the chat, and I moved it to the Q&A section. She says, I'm super new to this. How can I tell if our site was created with blocks?
It's a good question. If you open it in WordPress, I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way of looking at this. If when you open it in WordPress, you have a white sidebar on the right-hand side, then you're probably in the block editor. But God, this is actually a harder to answer question.
I guess the other way is easier. If you can rule out that you're running the classic editor plugin, and if you go into a post and it doesn't say convert this to blocks, then you're probably already using blocks. Yeah, there ought to be some kind of logo, shouldn't there, at the bottom?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things you can do is take a look at the Yoast SEO Academy, because we have a very nice course on the block editor, and that will show you what it looks like and how to use it.
Yeah, it's actually very good and free.
That is important as well. Yes.
Well, it's not important. It's actually not good for our wallet, but it's good for you.
True. It makes it also easier to send people to.
And that is very true.
All right. So one last question, because it is already time, and we're going to skip the why didn't Taco become a comedian question, because there's no good answer to that. But so there's a question on the gallery change. Will that happen automatically when 5.9 comes?
Ooh, it's a block, so it probably won't automatically update your existing galleries. You might need to go in and click around a bit to transform them. Always a bit hard to say with blocks, isn't it? Some of them can automatically update. Some of them break horrendously when they don't. It's worth looking into. We should find out.
Yeah, you probably need to change them over manually. I don't think that will add imports from other plugins to a Gutenberg block. That would be a new thing to do for WordPress as a community. So now you'll need to change them manually, but it does look like that gallery block is something that we will all have a lot of fun playing with.
Yeah. It's such a common use case, isn't it, right? I want to display a grid of 6 photos, but I want to change the sizes slightly, and I maybe want a pop-up, and yeah.
All right, so we'll be able to demo it in a future webinar for sure. For today, I want to thank everyone for sticking around for the full hour, because this is probably the longest we went on. At the bottom of your screen is the register for our next webinar button, and at the top you can follow Joost on Crowdcast. If you want to see more of us, you can join us at WordCamp US, which will be happening online this Friday. So October 1st, check out us.wordcamp.org, and we hope to see you there as well. Have a good day.